This video is sponsored by Squarespace. All right, so Alan, when I last saw you, this was in New Jersey, and now we're here in Arizona. So tell me about this structure and the impetus for building it.
This is the Arizona Observatory. Finished it about a year ago, and as we discussed in the last video, the plan was to move this to somewhere in the southwest, and it ended up, at least for now, here in Arizona, southeast portion of Arizona. And the building itself was designed to be able to house this telescope and the 10-inch Zeiss refractor. The idea being that it would be a rollout operation where I roll the telescopes out onto these isolated piers that have Ethernet and AC connections to them. One of the reasons why I chose a rollout and not a roll-off or a dome at this point is just for versatility. In addition, the Zeiss lens is coming up on 100 years old, and it really requires some finesse in terms of its environment. And I can keep that room in there by using the mini split at a certain temperature that keeps the lens cell for the refractor from going through a lot of thermal cycles. The dimensions of the deck are really based on the swing radius of this telescope. So that's what put it here, and I thought, I could try to fit the Zeiss in, and we'll see that later when we bring it out. And that fits pretty well on this pier here. They just both can't be out here at the same time, otherwise you have cross swords.
Sure.
So,
and what kind of surprises did you have as you were designing this? Because this is something you've never done before. So what came up during the design process?
So probably the biggest issue that came up was this telescope weighs about 1,350 pounds, and that weighs about 750 pounds all told. So I wasn't sure the structural support of the Trex on the decking in terms of whether it would handle the modified pallet jack that I used to drive it out. Because so the pressure is really on just those three wheels, the two rollers in the front and the drive wheel on the back. So the first time I brought it out, the deck really struggled, and it actually collapsed slightly in one spot. So the remedy for that was to put this kind of a runway of 1/4-inch stainless steel plating down, and that spans the substructure of the deck very well.
I noticed as I was pulling up to this Arizona Observatory that it said for sale on the outside, and then you also had me drop by your New Mexico site, which is just land at this point, and that also said for sale. So what's going on? Are you thinking of a third place, or are you deciding between the two still?
So the latter, deciding between the two. So I ended up with these two Southwest properties, both of which have advantages and disadvantages. This one has a lot of infrastructure. The weather is definitely more favorable. The New Mexico site is a much larger lot, and it's a slightly darker area, but it's a higher elevation. We're at 4,800 feet here, plus or minus, and the New Mexico one is 7,600 feet. The New Mexico one also has a very well-behaved air mass, so the seeing is really, really nice there. So the idea is that I can't, at this point, maintain or really justify having two Southwest properties, because I intend to stay on the farm that in New Jersey that was in the first video. So I really need to sell one of them. So the idea is that they're both for sale. Whichever one sells first, I keep the other.
So while this one is out, let's talk about the 50-inch scope. So you've told me that there's been more progress made, but there's also still a lot of improvements you're planning to make to it. So tell me about the story since we last...
Okay, so in the last video, the upper cage was redone, the octagon, that's all carbon fiber. The camera mount, and which also uses a dovetail for the visual mount, are mounted on that pyramid. That's all done. The Gemini rotator and the focusing in the camera system, basically the imaging back is working well. The visual back, not so much. It turned out the ray trace diagram was off by just about 1.5 inches, so I can't quite get enough in focus to make that work. So I'm going to try to solve a bunch of problems at once. There is a new mirror being made. Mike Lockwood is in the process of making a new 51-inch quartz mirror, and he's just going to increase the focal length of that by a few inches to fix the visual back issue. In addition to that, I'm going to have a new lower cage and mirror cell done. Star Structure is doing that, and they're going to make that out of steel, and that's going to have a number of upgrades, including automated mirror cover, open and closing, and he's also going to make motorized collimators for it, so you can collimate it at the eyepiece if you need to. And it'll be much stiffer than the aluminum. So the only thing that's really going to remain from the original design is the altitude bearings, the ground board, and this erector set kind of frame that it's on.
So you have these two telescopes. What do you say are the strengths of each telescope in terms of what you like to do?
So oddly enough, this is a 50-inch, soon to be 51-inch f3.5, and that's a 10-inch f16.2. The focal lengths are actually pretty close.
Oh, okay.
This one's 44-44, which actually will go up by a little bit when he does the mirror, and that one's in the low 4000s. So this one, it's nothing new. This one is best for deep sky objects, galaxies, planetary nebula, and anything that's really dim.
Yep.
Right. And of course, the 10-inch holds its own with dim objects, but the real strength is planets and double stars.
Nice. Yeah. So you were working with a local contractor. Tell me about some of the things that he suggested for this site that were interesting.
Okay, so up to now, really all my projects have been joint projects with my dad, pretty much in the Northeast. But when you move to a place like this, which is completely different, it's good to have some local expertise. And we're adjacent to another astronomy site that had used a contractor who was very high quality and came highly recommended. He had built a couple of observatories for them, and they worked out really well. Some of the local knowledge that he brought in terms of what you need to do on this particular site is that even though it's a desert, you do have a lot of flooding in the monsoon season, so you really have to be careful about how you channel your water around. The other thing that you would think would make sense, but you wouldn't really think about amongst all the other things going on, is dust. So there's a lot of dust here. And he knew about putting this special coating on the ground to minimize any of the dust blowing on the instruments. And I have blowers and power washers on the deck, and I use them, but it doesn't really, there's not really a lot of dust coating on it to clean off. So that's worked very well. Finally, one of the things that actually I came up with, and he went and found the material, is I'm always worried about thermal re-emissions, especially like when concrete gets heated up. And so I have a sidewalk over here, I have a loading ramp over there. It's all concrete. So all the concrete structures on the property here have this special thermal coating. So like even if you feel it, it's had sun on it all day, but it's just warm to the touch. So they don't have a massive heat buildup and then a re-radiation at night. So once the sun goes down, it's pretty much at equilibrium, by the time you would get to observe.
So you've built many different types of observatories. This was a new one for you. Do you have any suggestions for viewers about, how to think through what type of observatory works best? Is it all sort of location and based, and also sort of what you want out of a site, and how do you think about that?
Yeah, you have to think about what your overall goals are, your design goals, and then of course it's the instrument and the environment. Like I said, these two instruments could be in New Mexico, and it would be a completely different structure just because it's a different environment, even though the mission would be kind of the same, and the instruments would be the same. One of the things about this site is got a beautiful wide open sky, and we'd hate to cover that with a dome, right? So here we can sit out on the deck and relax and observe and do whatever we need to do.
Okay, so now we have the 10-inch Zeiss refractor out, which you've mentioned is like 100 years old. So how did you get this telescope, and tell us a little bit about the history of it?
I was just perusing Astromart one day, which is very dangerous, and this one showed up. And it was built by John Pons, and the lens is a Zeiss Fraunhofer Achromat. from 1927. I sent the serial number into Zeiss, and they confirmed it. It predates the lens of the Griffith Observatory refractor. But John got a hold of it. Apparently, he said it was rescued by an infantryman in World War II that was on some shelf in some lab in Germany. And they brought it back to the US, and it went through a couple of owners. But John eventually got a hold of it, and he designed the tube and built some parts of the tube, had other parts fabricated. This is an early Byers Series 3 equatorial mount. As you can see, it's just one switch, turns everything on and gets the motors running. It does have the hand paddle for fine guidance and a little bit of panning. The other thing that John managed to get with this telescope, it took him about 20 years to really build the whole thing, is that in the mid, so it's an f/16.2, so it's pretty well corrected for color already, just because the focal length is focal ratio is so high. But he managed to get a device called a Tri-Space. And the Tri-Space was made by Roland Christen in the mid-'80s. And from what I understand, he made 3 of them. So this is one of 3. And it's 4 inches. So what John did is, so you have your end piece here with focuser attachment. There's a frame that comes up. And sitting right about here, right about where the light cone will be about 4 inches, is this 3-element Tri-Space. And that corrects for the any residual chromatic aberration.
And I noticed in the upper floor there, you have a dark room. Are you doing any photography with this telescope?
Yeah, so that's a project. So Stan Honda is a pretty well-known astrophotographer, especially for nightscapes and whatnot. And he, early in his career, he worked as a photographer for some local newspapers in New York, and he did a lot of film developing. So together, we've kind of created a darkroom up there, and we want to see if we can make any progress doing film astrophotography, kind of old school. So to that end, I went out and I bought a couple of medium format Pentax 6.7 cameras and had some adapters made. So the long-term plan is to see how well we can do auto guiding and get some film imaging out of this. And then if I can get the derotation working well on the 50-inch, we'll do it on the 50-inch also.
Okay.
But Stan's been developing, he's got the darkroom set up, everything's in it. He's been developing some pictures, and we've been doing some test images. But we really need to get the auto guiding up to get the exposures longer.
If you take astrophotos, what do you actually do with them? Well, one thing I'd suggest is to create your own website to display them, like I have at nicocarver.com. And today's sponsor, Squarespace, makes that incredibly easy. You can purchase your domain name and hosting all in one place, and Squarespace includes professional templates for your website that are intuitive and easy to customize due to Squarespace Blueprint, which is their design system. Everything you need is included, from a spam-free contact form to selling tools built in. And if you do want to sell a service or product through your website, customers can pay however is convenient for them, from credit card to PayPal to Afterpay. So if you need a professional website, check out squarespace.com/nebulaphotos for your free trial. And if you like it, you get 10% off your first purchase of hosting or a domain with code nebulaphotos at checkout. That's it for this one. Thanks everyone for watching. Clear skies.